Good evening, everyone. Welcome to lecture 2 on structural organization in animals. So in last lecture, we studied about the basics of tissues, that what are the tissues. And we had a brief introduction about different types of tissues. And then we had a detailed discussion on epithelial tissues. What are different types of epithelial tissues? What are their function? What is their location? In today's lecture, we will be dealing with other type of tissue, which is the connective tissue. So before starting with the connective tissue, I would just like to have a brief introduction on what we discussed in the last lecture also. So we know that in any organism and any animal, there are different levels of organization. So starting with the chemical level, the first basic level is the chemical level that can include the inorganic as well as organic chemicals. Like we have carbohydrates, which is made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So it consists of some organic as well as inorganic minerals. Then we have a cellular level of organization. So in cellular level, it is the basic unit of life. So cell is the structural and the basic unit of life. These cells then acquire the similar structure or function. So a group of cells that acquire a similar structure or function forms a tissue. So the third level is a tissue level. For example, in this figure, we can see it may be form a epithelial lining like cuboidal epithelium, or it may form some muscles like smooth muscles. After that, we have an organ level of organization where different tissues or group of tissues are precisely arranged to acquire or to accomplish a particular specific function. So the next level of organization is the organ level of organization. Above that, we have organ system level of organization where a group of organs contribute to a particular function. Like, for example, if I talk about cardiovascular system, so it consists of heart, it consists of blood vessels, it consists of arteries, veins, capillaries, etc. So all of these different organs like heart or different blood vessels, the components of blood vessels forms a particular system, which is the cardiovascular system that provides the blood supply to all the organs. So after this organ level of organization, we have a broader level of organization, which is the organ system level of organization. And then these different organ systems like cardiovascular system, excretory system, nervous system, they combine to form a complete organism. So the last and the largest level of organization is the organism level of organization. We discussed that different animal tissues. So in this we are mainly dealing with the tissues first. So different animal tissues are broadly classified into 4 types: epithelial tissues. Next we have muscle tissues, we have connective tissues, and the nervous tissues. Function of the epithelial tissue is mainly protection and covering, and we have already discussed different types of epithelial tissues in the last lecture. In this lecture, we will be discussing the connective tissue. So the main function of connective tissue is it helps in binding, it provides support, and it helps in the transportation. So basically, connective tissue can further be divided into various types depending on the function. So it can be fibrous connective tissue, it can be fluid like blood and lymph. So it can be fluid connective tissue or it can be skeletal connective tissue that mainly consists of bone and cartilage. So it can also be called as supportive connective tissue. So connective tissue can broadly be classified as fibrous connective tissue. Then we have skeletal connective tissues or supporting, it's better to write supporting connective tissues that provides the support. And then we have fluid connective tissue, right? So we have fibrous connective tissue, we have supporting connective tissue, and we have fluid connective tissue. So we will learn what is the basic characteristics of all these connective tissues and how fibrous connective tissue, supporting connective tissue, and fluid connective tissue differ from each other, and what is the composition of each one of them. So what is a connective tissue? Connective tissue is complex animals' most abundant and widely distributed tissue. So it is the most widely distributed tissue which is present in the animal body. It is quite diverse, as we see or discuss that it is of three types like fibrous, supporting, and fluid. So it is quite diverse in structure and function. And but even so, all types, despite being differences in the structure and the function of these different types of connective tissue, there are certain similarities which are present in all of these connective tissues. For example, all of them have these three components, like they have a specialized cells. For example, some of them have fibroblasts, some of them have adipocytes, etc. They have a ground matrix, ground substance, which is usually known as matrix, and they have protein fibers. So all of these tissues, irrespective of whether they are fibrous connective tissue, whether they are supporting connective tissue, or they are fluid connective tissues, all of them have these three components. That is, they have their own specialized cells, they have their ground substance, or we can say they have the matrix, and they have the protein fibers. So the ground substance is a non-cellular material. So it does not have any cellular entity. It is a non-cellular material which helps in separating the cells and varies in consistency from solid to semi-fluid to fluid. So basically, it is not always that the ground material or the ground substance is always a solid substance. It may vary from solid to semi-fluid or to fluid in nature. So it is a non-cellular material. That is, it does not have cells, it lacks cells, and usually it has mainly water and other inorganic or organic composition materials which are present. Next, we will discuss the type of specialized cells when we will discuss the type of connective tissue. So every connective tissue has some specialized cells, and the fibers which are present in the connective tissue can be of three possible types. So it can be white collagen fiber, it can be reticular fiber, or it can be yellow elastic fibers. So what is the function of each of these fibers, protein fibers, and how they are arranged? So white collagen fibers contains the collagen. It is a protein that gives the flexibility and strength. We know with aging, the collagen decreases and therefore we experience wrinkles. So it is due to the lack of collagen or due to the decrement in the concentration or the amount of collagen. So white collagen fibers that contains collagen is a protein that provides the flexibility and strength to the tissue. Reticular fibers are very thin collagen fibers that are highly branched and form delicate supporting networks. So the name itself suggests reticulate means network, right? Reticular means network-like structure. So they are very thin collagen fibers which are highly branched and form delicate supporting networks. The next is the yellow elastic fiber that contains the elastin, not the collagen. It is a protein that is not as strong as collagen, but it is more elastic. So wherever the elasticity is required in the tissue, usually it is the yellow elastic fiber which is present. So this is a general basic diagram of the fibrous connective tissue. And we can, along with fibrous connective tissue, some other components are also shown here, like white blood cell, which is a part of fluid connective tissue, etc. So the adipose cells are the composition of connective tissue. Adipose cells, the function of adipose cell is to store the fat. The main thing I want you to see here is the ground substance. It is the substance that fills the spaces between the cells and the fibers. So these are the cells, different cells that are present, right? So these are the different cells which are present. So adipose cells have different types of cells. You can see the structure is different. They have adipocytes. Similarly, we have fibroblast cells, so which divides to produce the other type of cells. Then we have reticular fiber. You can see here, reticular fiber are branched. They are very thin and they are forming a network. So this is the reticular fiber, which is a composition of connective tissue. We have collagen fiber, which are unbranched, strong and flexible. So you can see here the collagen fibers are unbranched, while the reticular fibers are branched. Then we have elastic fibers, which are also branched and stretchable. They have elasticity, so they are more elastic than the collagen fibers or the reticular fibers. So they are more elastic than the collagen and reticular fibers. It provides elasticity to the tissue because they are stretchable and they are branched. Right? So these are the different compositions like the specialized cells, for example, the adipose cell or fibroblast cells, the ground substance that fills the spaces between the protein fibers and the cells, and the different types of protein fibers like white collagen fiber, which provides the strength or support. Then we have reticular fiber, which also acts as a network and provides the support. And yellow elastic fiber, which provides the elasticity. Although they are not as strong as collagen, but the function of elastin fibers is to provide the elasticity. So this is the diagram of a connective tissue showing most of the components of the connective tissue. Now, what are the basic functions? So first and foremost function is to connect the different structures. As the name suggests, it helps in connecting the structures. So to connect the structures is the main function. Then the second function is to form the packing around the organs. So for example, the adipose tissue, the fat layer is present around many organs, providing a packaging of that organ and providing it the protection from the shock. To form a supporting framework, to combat the foreign toxins, like in the form of by the production of antibodies. So the antigen-antibody reaction helps in protecting dealing with the antigens or the different foreign bodies, to replace tissues that have been destroyed by the injury. So these are the basic functions of the connective tissue which are present inside an animal. So as I mentioned, connective tissue can broadly be classified into various types. So it is fibrous connective tissue, it is skeletal or supporting connective tissue. Then we have specialized type of tissue, which is the fluid connective tissue. So the fibrous connective tissue so we will deal with all of these one by one. So firstly, we are starting with the fibrous connective tissue. So what is the basic characteristics of fibrous connective tissue and how it differs from the other types? So fibrous connective tissue consists mainly of parallel regular collagen fibers with a few scattered fibroblast cells. So the specialized cell here is the fibroblast cell, and it mainly consists of parallel collagen fibers. So you can see in this figure also that they consist of parallel collagen fibers with few specialized cells called the fibroblasts. So this parallel arrangement provides it a great strength, yet it is flexible. So along with the strength, it is flexible also. The location are related to the need for the flexible strength, wherever we require the flexibility as well as the strength. So the parallel arrangement of collagen is helping in providing the strength as well as the flexibility to the tissue structure. So it is present usually in the structures that require the flexibility as well as the strength. So for example, the tissues or the outer wall of the arteries are reinforced with the fibrous connective tissue, because what is the function of arteries? The function of arteries is to supply the blood to the organs. So it is usually these blood vessels are under the high pressure because they have to supply the blood to the organ. So the pressure is high inside the arteries, and therefore they require the flexibility as well as the strength to bear that pressure. Therefore, the fibrous connective tissue is usually present in the outer walls of the arteries. Fibrous connective tissue has relatively poor blood supply, making it slow repair. So fibrous connective tissue can further be classified into two types, which is the loose fibrous connective tissue and the dense fibrous connective tissue. So what is the function of loose fibrous connective tissue? Loose fibrous connective tissue supports the epithelium and also many internal organs. It is present in lungs, arteries and urinary bladder. And due to the presence of these fibrous connective tissue, loose fiber connective tissue, these organs are able to expand. So usually wherever we need some kind of flexibility as well as strength, for example, in lungs, in arteries or in urinary bladder, these organs need to expand themselves according to the conditions. So therefore, the loose connective tissue is present in these areas. It forms a protective covering enclosing many internal organs such as muscles, blood vessels, and nerves. So usually it is present in the as covering of many internal organs that are under very high pressure or that continuously are in movement. For example, the muscles, blood vessels, or the nerves. There are various types of loose connective tissue. For example, the loose connective tissue can be areolar or adipose connective tissue. Areolar loose connective tissue consists of air spaces. Adipose loose connective tissue consists of fat storage. Is concerned with the fat storage, right? So, firstly, we will be dealing with the areolar connective tissue. So, the cells of areolar or loose connective tissue are called the fibroblasts. So, the specialized cells in these are the fibroblasts. A blast is a producing cell that produce the other cells or that produce the protein fibers. Collagen fibers are very strong. Elastin fibers, as I mentioned, are elastic, that is able to return to their original length or recoil after being stretched. So these protein fibers and tissue fluid make up the matrix or non-living portion of areolar connective tissue. So since both elastic fibers and the collagen fibers are present, therefore it will have both the strength due to the presence of collagen fibers and elasticity due to the presence of elastic fibers in its matrix. Also within the matrix are the mast cells. So what is the function of these mast cells? They release inflammatory chemicals like cytokines. So inflammatory chemicals like cytokines are released when tissue is damaged. So the main function, so the function of these mast cells is the repairment and in order to protect from any infection. And many white blood cells which are capable of self-locomotion. So within the matrix, they have some immune cells also. As I mentioned, they have mast cells, they have white blood cells. Their importance here is related to the location of areolar connective tissue because, for example, areolar connective tissue is present in lungs. So along with the inhaled air, we may have the passage to the certain bacteria or some viruses. And in order to prevent the infection in the body due to the inhalation of these bacteria and viruses, our body need to fight against these infections. And therefore, it requires certain immune cells that may release some inflammatory chemicals when the tissue is either damaged or it encounters any kind of infection. So areolar connective tissue with its mast cells and many white blood cells is strategically placed. So for example, as I mentioned, it is also placed beneath the dermis of the skin and beneath the epithelial tissue of all the body systems. Why? Because they have openings, and from these openings, the bacteria or the other pathogens may enter, and they may circulate throughout the body. So in order to prevent the infection within the body, areolar connective tissue along with the mast cells prevent it from the infection. So this is some example. So this is the figure of areolar connective tissue. You can see the air spaces, and it consists of collagen fibers that provides the strength and the elastin fibers that provides the elasticity to it. Then they have white blood cells, and the specialized cells are the fibroblast cells that produce the protein fibers. So loose connective tissue has space between the components. It has space between the components. It occurs beneath the skin and most epithelial layers. It functions in the support and it binds the organs. Right? The next is the adipose tissue. The adipose tissues cells are called the adipocytes. So sites, the word sites is usually used for the cells. So the cells of the adipose tissue are known as the adipocytes, and they are specialized to store the fat in microscopic droplets. So their function is the fat storage. Adipose tissue, the Latin word adipalis means fatty, and it serves as the primary storage or the energy reservoir of the body. So it is the primary energy reservoir for the body, stores the fat, so it helps in the fat storage. Adipose tissue also insulates the body. So the main function of the adipose tissue is to provide the insulation. It contributes to body contours and it provides the cushioning to the internal organs as well. In mammals, adipose tissue is found particularly beneath the skin. It is found around the kidneys and on the surface of the heart, providing the protection to these internal organs from the sudden damage or sudden injury. Most adipocytes are white, so they are usually white adipocytes. But it is very important to remember that in fetus, in infants, or in children, they may be brown due to the mitochondria and may be good at heat production. So if I have to compare the white adipocyte and a brown adipocyte, so the white adipocyte will mainly consist of a fat granules and very few mitochondria. Why? If I talk about the brown adipocyte, so the brown adipocyte will have a very few fat droplet, and it will mainly have the mitochondria. And this mitochondria, since it is the powerhouse of the cell, it will help in providing the energy to the cell and thus will help in the heat production. So therefore, in babies or in fetus, usually it is the brown adipocytes which are present, whose function is mainly to provide the fetus from the cold. So it provides insulation against the cold by producing more energy with the help of the more mitochondria that are present in the brown adipocytes. But in well-developed humans or in adults, it is usually the white adipocytes which are present, whose main function is to store the fat and provide insulation and protection to the internal organs. So you can see here, it is usually the white adipocytes tissues which are present. It has very less air spaces. Most of the space is filled with the adipocytes. So cells are filled with most of the space is filled with the fat. So cells are filled with the fat. It occurs beneath the skin, around heart and other organs. The function is the insulation and fat storage. So this is the adipose tissue structure. You can see here there are many fat cells. Fat. So this is the storage of fat. We cannot say fat cells actually, but there are many adipocytes that store the fat. Next, we have dense connective tissue. So after loose connective tissue, the other type of fibrous connective tissue is dense fibrous connective tissue. So the dense fibrous connective tissue can be divided into two types. Further can be divided into two types. So dense fibrous connective tissue majorly consists of more fibers and less matrix. More fibers and less matrix. While if I talk about the loose connective tissue, the loose connective tissue consists mainly of more matrix and less fiber. So it consists of more matrix, less fibers, while the dense connective tissue consists of it mainly consists of more of the fibers and less of the matrix. So dense connective tissue can further be divided into two types. That is the dense regular tissue, which is tendons and ligaments, and dense irregular tissue, which is found in the skin. So dense fibrous connective tissue has collagenous fibers which are closely packed. So therefore, it is highly dense. It is fibrous because of the presence of large amount of fibers. It is found in the dermis of skin, tendons and ligaments. So in dermis of skin, it is the dense fibrous connective tissue which is present. The function of these fibers is to provide the support. It has the strength due to the presence of collagen. So the collagen fibers you can see here, it is present. The collagen fibers are present in dense amount, and the nuclei of the fibroblast can be seen in this figure. So dense regular tissue consists of tendons and ligaments. Dense irregular tissue is found in the skin. So what is the function of tendons and ligaments? Tendons are the structures or the connective tissue that connects the muscles to the bone. This is important to remember. It might be asked that tendons are the ones that connect the muscles to bones, muscles to muscles, bone to bone, or muscles to other structures. So the tendons are the structures that connects the muscles to the bones. Ligaments are the one that connects the bone to the bone. So these structures have very less blood supply, and therefore once it gets damaged, their repair is difficult. So suppose if someone had ligament rupturing or ligament tear, then it takes a lot of time to heal that ligament because of the lack of the blood supply or very less blood supply. So it is important to remember here is that the what is the function of tendons. So tendons are the ones that connects the or muscles to the bones, and ligaments are the ones that connects the bone to the bone, right? An irregular type of fibrous connective tissue forms the dermis of the skin and the fascia, that is the membranes around the muscles. So these are the irregular connective tissues which are usually found in the dermis of the skin or around the muscles. Although the collagen fibers here are not parallel to one another, the tissue is still strong. So why it is called irregular? Because of the irregular arrangement of collagen fibers. The collagen fibers here are not parallel, just we see in the so they are not parallel as in contrast to what we see in the regular connective tissue, right? So because of the irregular arrangement of collagen fibers, it is known as the irregular type of fibrous connective tissue. It is usually present in the dermis of the skin. It forms the dermis of the skin and the membranes around the muscles. So although the collagen fibers here are not parallel, the tissue is still strong. The dermis is different from other fibrous connective tissue in the sense that it has a good blood supply. So as I mentioned that the other fibrous connective tissues lack blood supply, they have very poor blood supply, but except irregular type of fibrous connective tissue which has a very good blood supply, and it is present in the dermis of the skin or in the membranes around the muscles. So these connective tissues are irregular in nature. The collagen fibers are not arranged parallelly. However, despite the irregular arrangement of the collagen fibers, it has a great strength, and the dermis is different. Why it is different from the other types of fibrous connective tissue? Because of the rich blood supply, unlike the other types of fibrous connective tissue. So this was about the fibrous connective tissue. So fibrous connective tissue was broadly classified into two types, loose and dense. So the loose connective tissue mainly consists of adipose tissue and areolar tissue. So fibrous connective tissue is divided into two types, loose and dense. Loose connective tissue. In loose connective tissue, we discussed areolar tissue and adipose tissue, where the collagen fibers are arranged parallelly and they have spaces in between the cells. Dense connective tissue is divided into two types, regular and irregular fibrous dense connective tissue because of the arrangement. So in irregular connective tissue, what we see is dermis, and in regular connective tissue, it is the tendons and the ligaments, which are helping in the connection of muscles to the bones. So tendons that helps in the muscle, connecting the muscles to the bone, and ligaments that helps in the connection between the bone to bone. So the next type of connective tissue is the supporting connective tissue. It is also known as skeletal connective tissue in some cases. So supporting connective tissue can be of two types. The first one is the cartilage. The second is the bone. So in cartilage, the cells lie in the small chambers called the lacunae. Single lacuna separated by a matrix that is solid yet flexible. So you can see here the cells are separated in a space which is called as the lacunae. So this is the cell, and it is the lacunae in which the cells are present. So you can see in this figure also that in the matrix, there are certain cells which are embedded and are present inside the lacunae, which is the space. Unfortunately, because this tissue lacks a direct blood supply, it heals very slowly. And there are three types of cartilage distinguished by the type of fiber in the matrix. So, based on the type of fibers, so we know that there are different types of fibers like yellow elastic fibers, collagen fibers, etc., reticular fibers. So, based on the type of the fibers which are present in the matrix, the specialized cells which are present in the cartilage are the chondrocyte cells. Chondrocytes. These are the cells that help in the production of cartilage, chondrocyte cells. There are three different types of cartilage based on the protein fibers which are present in the matrix. So the first one is the hyaline cartilage. It is the most common type of cartilage and it contains very fine collagen fibers. The matrix has a white translucent appearance. You can see in this figure. What is the function? It has cells in the lacunae. You can see here they have cells in the lacunae. It occurs in the nose and walls of the respiratory passages. So the nose and walls of the respiratory passages at the end of the bones, including ribs, hyaline cartilage is present. And the function of hyaline cartilage is to provide the support and protection. Fine. So hyaline cartilage is the most common type of cartilage. It mainly consists of thin collagen fibers and very fine collagen fibers, and the matrix has a white translucent appearance when we visualize it under the microscope. And these cells which forms the cartilage are known as the chondrocyte cells, which are present within the lacunae inside the matrix. The next type of cartilage is the elastic cartilage. So elastic cartilage, as the name suggests, it has more elastic fibers than the hyaline cartilage, and therefore since it has more elastic fibers, it has higher elasticity. That is, it has higher flexibility. So it is more flexible and is found, for example, in the framework of the outer ear that is really flexible. We can see also that in the outer ear is really flexible. So in this, it is not the bone which is present, but it is the cartilage which is present. For this reason, it is more flexible and is present in the outer region of the outer ear. Next is the fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage has a matrix. So this one is the second type. This one is the third type, fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage has a matrix containing strong collagen fibers. So unlike the hyaline cartilage that has fine collagen fibers, in fibrocartilage, it is the strong collagen fiber and therefore it can withstand the tension and the pressure, such as the pads between the backbone vertebrae and the knee joint wedges. So wherever the higher pressure is required, like for example the knee joint wedges or in the pads between the vertebra and the backbone vertebra, there we have the fibrocartilage, where, as the name itself suggests, it has high fibrous component and the collagen fibers are really thick, and they are supposed to protect, or they are supposed to withstand the pressure and the tension within the cells and within the tissues. So it is present usually in between the knee joint wedges or in the pads in the backbone vertebrae. So just by remembering the properties of the fibers, by remembering the composition of different types of fibers, it will be easy for you to understand the location as well. Because wherever we need the elasticity, like as I mentioned in the outer ear, which is highly elastic. So if the options include the fibrous cartilage, elastic cartilage, hyaline cartilage, or none of the above, so we can easily identify that since it has the elasticity, it must be elastic cartilage. So this is how, once we remember the functions or the structures, basically if we know the structure of any cartilage, we will be able to guess the location, whether what kind of cartilage is present in which location. So the next type of cartilage, the next type of connective tissue is the bone. So as I mentioned that the dense fibrous connective, the supportive connective tissue is of two types, the cartilage and the bones. So cartilage, which have specialized cells, chondrocytes, and it has all the protein fibers like elastic fibers or the collagen fibers. The next type of supporting connective tissue is the bone. So of all the connective tissues, bone is the most rigid type. So it is the most rigid connective tissue. Fine. It consists of extremely hard matrix of inorganic salts. So basically, it is like cementing, right? So we know that when suppose we are making a building, within the brick we have cements also that provides the strength. So it has a extremely hard matrix of inorganic salts, notably calcium salts, which are deposited around the protein fibers, especially the collagen fibers, providing it the strength. The inorganic salts give bones rigidity, and the protein fibers provide elasticity and the strength to it. Therefore, the bones are rigid, elastic, and they have a high strength. So the bone can be of two types, like usually it is a compact bone and a spongy bone. So compact bone makes up the shaft of a long bone. So if it is a long bone, usually the shaft is made up of the compact bone and the above portion is usually made up of the spongy bone. So the structure of a compact bone is that it consists of a cylindrical structural units called the osteons, or we can say it as a Haversian system. So it is an Haversian canal system. So the unit is called as the osteons or the Haversian system. The central canal of each osteon is surrounded by rings of hard matrix. So it is surrounded by the rings of hard matrix. Central canal, which is also known as the Haversian canal, it is surrounded by the rings of hard matrix. Bone cells are located in spaces called lacunae between the rings of the matrix. So in between the rings of the matrix, the bone cells are located in the lacunae. The bone cells are known as the osteocytes. So osteocytes are the bone cells, chondrocytes are the cartilage cells. Blood vessels in the central canal carry nutrients that allow bone to renew itself. Thin extensions of bone cells within canaliculi, which are the minute canals, connect the cells to each other and to the central canal. So this is the basic structure that we have discussed. The ends of a long bone contain the spongy bone. So as I mentioned, you can see in this figure also that this is the compact bone. This is the spongy bone. The ends, it is usually present on the ends, and it has an entirely different structure. Spongy bone contains numerous bony bars and the plates, which are separated by the irregular spaces. It is usually lighter than the compact bone, and spongy bone is still designed for the strength. So although it is lighter, but it is designed for the strength. And we can see here the structure as I discussed of the bone. So osteon or the Haversian system. So you can see here it is the central canal, which is also known as the Haversian canal, which is surrounded by the matrix, and the matrix, then we have osteocytes within a lacunae that is present. Canalicules are the structures which are very thin structures that help in the connecting between the different canals. So these are the structures that help in the connection between the different canals. So canalicules are those structures. So basically, if I have to talk about the bone, it can be divided into it has four components: periosteum, matrix, endoosteum, and bone marrow cavity. What is the function of bone marrow cavity? It helps in the production of cells. Now, matrix, as I mentioned, matrix consists of many components. So if I have to write here, then the matrix has many canals. So it has a Haversian canal. Haversian canal is a vasculature channel that runs parallel to the long axis. So it will be like, if I imagine it like a wood log, then the center to which the xylem phloem we have, through which the suppose if I considered it as a wood log, and if I found the center of that wood log which supplies the blood, then it will be the Haversian canal. The next one is the Walkman's canal. So what is the function of Waxman canal? The function of Waxman canal is to connect the various Haversian canal. This Haversian canal. So it connects various Haversian canals. So like canaliculi, it can be called as canaliculi that connects the various Haversian canals. And the third one is the lamellae. So lamellae are these concentrically arranged rings. These are known as lamellae, within which the osteocytes are present. So this was about the supporting connective tissue that consists of bones and cartilage. So till now we have studied about the fibrous connective tissue. Then we studied about the supporting connective tissue that consists of bones and cartilage. Next, we will see about the fluid connective tissue. So, as the name suggests, it is fluidic in nature. That is why it is fluidic, because it consists of a fluid matrix. So, blood, which consists of formed elements and plasma, is a fluid connective tissue located in the blood vessels. In adults, the production of blood cells known as hematopoiesis occurs in the red bone marrow. So, the bone marrow, which is present in the bone, helps in the hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis, that is the production of blood cells. Production of blood cells. It occurs in the red bone marrow. The internal environment of the body consists of the blood and the tissue fluid. We know that the interior of the human body consists of a blood and the tissue fluid. The system of the body helps keep the blood composition and chemistry within the normal limits. Like we have a process of homeostasis that maintains the temperature, that maintains the pH of the blood. So in turn, in order to maintain the pH or in order to maintain the salt composition within the blood, the body creates the tissue fluid. Blood transports, what is the function of blood? It transports nutrients and oxygen to tissue fluid, removing carbon dioxide and other waste. It helps distribute heat and plays a role in fluid, ion, and pH balance. So its main function is maintenance. It helps in the homeostasis. And in adults, the production of, so there are two different terms. Don't get confused with this. The first is hematopoiesis, that is the production of production of blood cells. The second is the homeostasis. Homeostasis means the maintenance of the body temperature and the maintenance of body pH condition, etc. So blood is a liquid tissue. So this is very important, that blood is a liquid tissue. Why it is classified as a connective tissue? Because the cells are separated by a matrix, which is the plasma. So here the matrix is the plasma. Fine. Plasma is the liquid portion of the blood, usually containing several types of cells. So there are three things. Firstly, the whole blood. Then we have a liquid portion, plasma. Then we have serum. So blood minus blood cells is the plasma, and plasma minus fibrinogen, which helps in the blood clotting, etc., is the serum. So basically what happens is, when we centrifuge a blood, we will see that there is a layer which is formed above the blood cells. So the lower layer, which is red in color, is usually consists of the red blood cells, which is the erythrocytes. Above that, we have a layer of white blood cells, which is the leukocyte. And then we have a liquid portion, which is the plasma. So the plasma is the liquid portion, which is also the matrix of the blood, which is the matrix of the fluid connective tissue. And upon centrifugation, you can clearly separate the plasma from the blood, other blood components. And if I create a smear of that blood sample, what we will find is, we will see different kinds of cells like white blood cells, we will have red blood cells, we will have platelets, and the plasma. So plasma is forming the matrix, and these are the different types of cells. So blood minus the blood cells is the plasma, and plasma minus the fibrinogen is the serum. So if I talk about the whole blood consists of plasma, as I mentioned, and the formed elements. Plasma is usually 55%, and the formed elements are 45%. So blood is usually is mostly liquid in nature due to the presence of plasma. In plasma also we have water and other compositions. Water is usually 90 to 91% of the plasma, and the remaining compositions includes the amino acids, different nutrients, proteins like albumins, globulins, fibrinogen, different types of gases, electrolytes, and nitrogenous waste. However, the major composition of the plasma is the water. The next composition of the blood is the formed elements. So the next composition of the blood is the formed elements. Formed elements mainly consist of erythrocytes, which are RBCs, leukocytes, which are WBCs, and the platelets. So erythrocytes are the RBCs, platelets that help in blood clotting, and the leukocytes. Leukocytes are the WBCs that helps in fighting against the infection. So leukocytes can be of two types, granulocytes and agranulocytes, that contains granule-like structures. Agranulocytes lack granule-like structures. Right? So granulocytes are mainly neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils. So these are the granulocytes, and agranulocytes are lymphocytes and monocytes that helps in the phagocytosis and production of antibodies. So lymphocytes can be B cells and T cells that helps in against fighting the infection. Fine. So leukocytes, which are WBCs, usually increase in number during any infection, and it can be of two types, granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes includes neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, and agranulocytes includes lymphocytes and monocytes. So the red blood cells are small, they are biconcave in shape, they are disc-shaped cells without the nucleus. This is important that the matured RBC lacks the nuclei. The absence of nucleus makes the cells biconcave. The presence of the red pigment hemoglobin makes them red. So it is because of the presence of hemoglobin that the RBCs are red in color, and thereby making the blood red. Hemoglobin is composed of 4 units. So it has 4 units of alpha and beta hemoglobin, of alpha and beta globin. And each unit is composed of the protein globin and a complex iron. So it is complex with the help of the iron which is present. Therefore, iron is very important for us because it forms an iron containing structure called the heme, which is a major composition of the hemoglobin. The iron forms a loose association with oxygen. So we know that what is the function of hemoglobin? One of the functions is to transport the oxygen. So how it transports oxygen? Because the iron which is present in the heme unit of the hemoglobin forms loose association with oxygen, and in this way red blood cells transport oxygen and readily give it up to the tissues because the association is loose, and therefore it can easily provide the oxygen to the tissues. The next type of blood cells are the white blood cells, which can be distinguished from the RBCs by the fact that they are usually larger, they have a nucleus, and without staining would appear translucent. White blood cells if we stain, then it will characteristically look bluish in color because they have been stained that color. White blood cells, what is the function of white blood cells? It helps in fighting against the infection, usually in the two ways, either by the process of phagocytosis, that is by engulfing, or by the production of antibodies. So some white blood cells are phagocytic in nature and they engulf the infectious pathogens, while other blood cells either produce antibodies, molecules that combine with the foreign substance to inactivate them, or they kill cells outright there. The next composition of the blood cells is the platelets. Platelets are not the complete cells, rather they are the fragments of the giant cells which are present only in the bone marrow. So when any blood vessel gets damaged, platelets form a plug that seals the blood vessel. Therefore, the main function of the platelets is to prevent blood loss. So if there is a lack of platelets in any body, then there will be a single injury will lead to a lot of blood loss and it may be fatal. So, and basically it forms a seal around the vessel, and injured tissues releases molecules that further helps in the clotting process. So Therefore, platelets help in preventing the blood loss and inducing the clotting. So these are the major cells that are present within the blood. So the next type of fluid connective tissue is the lymph. It is also a fluid connective tissue which is located in the lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic vessels absorbs excess of tissue fluid. So whenever there is an excess of tissue fluid, it absorbs those tissue fluid and various dissolved salts in the tissues and transport them to a particular vessel of the cardiovascular system, which is the lymphatic vessel. Special lymphatic capillaries called the lacteals absorb fat molecules from the small intestine. Lymph nodes composed of fibrous connective tissues that occurs along the length of the lymphatic vessels. So there are various lymph nodes, for example, spleen. These lymph nodes consist of large concentration of WBCs and therefore they help in fighting against the infection. So in particular, lymph is cleansed as it passes through the lymph nodes because white blood cells congregate there and it fights against any bacteria or any infection which is present in that fluid. So these are the different types of connective tissue that major connective tissues that we discussed, that is blood, that consists of plasma as a matrix and RBCs, white blood cells and platelets. What is the within the blood vessels? The function of plasma is to transport the materials. The function of RBC is to carry the oxygen. Function of WBC is to destroy the pathogen, and function of platelets is to prevent the blood loss. Next, we have areolar connective tissue, which is a loose connective tissue that consists of fibroblast and a matrix of tissue fluid, collagen, and elastin fibers. It is present subcutaneously and it connects skin to muscles. WBCs destroy pathogens like mast cells which are present in this matrix. Mucous membranes, digestive system, respiratory, urinary, reproductive tract. But WBCs that are present in these areolar tissues destroy the pathogens. The next is the adipose tissue. Adipocytes that store the fat. They have very little matrix. Subcutaneously, they are present. They store excess energy. They produce chemicals that influence the appetite, use of nutrients, and inflammation. They are usually present around the eyes and kidneys. They act as they provide cushioning mechanism. Next, we have fibrous connective tissue that mostly consists of collagen fiber matrix with less fibroblast. Tendons and ligaments, for example, they are regular fibrous connective tissue. Or we have irregular fibrous connective tissue in the dermis. Tendons, the function of tendons is to connect the bones to the muscles. Function of ligaments is to connect the bone to bone. They form a strong inner layer of the skin. Elastic connective tissue, they usually consist of elastin fibers with few fibroblasts. They are usually present in the walls of large arteries where they have to maintain the blood pressure. Then we have bones and cartilage. Bones, which are made up of osteocytes in the matrix of calcium salts and collagen. Cartilage consists of chondrocytes in a flexible protein matrix. So bones are comparatively rigid. They are the most rigid connective tissue. Blood and lymph are the fluid connective tissue. So what is the function of bone? It supports the body, protects internal organs from mechanical injury, stores the excess calcium, contains and protects the red bone marrow. Similarly, cartilage is present in the wall of trachea. It keeps always open on joint surface of bones, smooth to prevent friction, like for example in tip of nose and outer ear, support between the vertebrae, and it helps in absorbing the shock. So with this, we end up with the connective tissue topic, and in the next lecture, we will take up the muscle tissues and the nervous tissues. So basically, what we see today is the different types of connective tissues. We already discussed fibrous. We discussed fibrous connective tissue that may be loose and dense, and we discussed supporting connective tissue that consists of bones and cartilage, and then we discussed fluid connective tissue that has blood and lymph. We discussed the different types of particular cells which are present in the matrix of these connective tissues and what are the composition of the matrix. Also, we discussed the location based on the composition of the matrix and the types of the cells which are present. So with this, I would like to end today's session and thank you all for attending it.